There we go. We got the 50. So anyway, thank you everybody for attending, and I hope you're all doing well and safe and all that. We're going to talk today about Kaizen energy treasure hunts, which is a little bit different than maybe a typical treasure hunt. And we'll explain all the differences and all that stuff. And so first, thank you for attending. Second, beautiful day outside. We got to take advantage of the weather somehow. So at least hopefully you're getting advantage to go outside a little bit, socially distantly. Who's Lorero? We're a consulting firm started in 1975. We've got primarily New England offices. We've got offices both in Raleigh, North Carolina, Washington, D.C. now. And we do a lot of stuff. And you can see we got employees, and it's actually 29 PEs now. And we do a lot of different things. So, I mean, we can help anybody in a lot of these areas, whether it's environmental or true structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, energy, construction, you name it. But the important thing is we're an approved vendor for both Energize Connecticut, Mass Saves, NYSERDA, Efficiency Vermont, Eversource, so on. So we do an awful lot of work with utility programs throughout the Northeast, but throughout the U.S. as well. And this is me. I'm the kind of running up our energy services part. We're required by law to talk about Lorero briefly, and I'll be real quick here. Biggest takeaway from this is been around the world, 25 countries, done lots of energy site visits and all sorts of things. And I've done at least 100 of these Kaizen energy treasure hunt events, these KETH events. I'm a member of AEE, like probably many of the people here, and certified energy auditor and all that stuff. But the last one is I'm pretty proud of, because I'm a certified professional in energy management systems. And that means that I can do strategic energy management, ISO 50001. I can help clients basically get to the certification step we do not certify. So what we're going to talk about today is, what is this KETH, this Kaizen Energy Treasure Hunt? And the first important thing is, how does it differ from an energy treasure hunt? And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about why and when, why use KETH, and we'll talk about the process steps, some of the typical finding and results, so you can kind of see what you can get out of using this process. And we'll talk about advantages and disadvantages over typical energy auditing or some other things. And then lastly, we'll talk about lessons learned. So one of the questions that we start with when we do these events is, what does Kaizen mean? I mean, it's not just a cool little term. Kaizen is a Japanese term that means, it's broken down Kai, which means change, and then Zen, to make good or make better. Your moment of Zen. So it really means taking something apart and considering how to reconstruct it in a different way, and hopefully in a better way. And it really can apply very well to energy. Now, why Kaizen events versus energy treasure hunts? They're obviously built upon similar process steps, but the Kaizen energy treasure hunts force you to apply lean thinking. Started off as lean manufacturing and the Toyota production system and all that, but it makes you think about these lean concepts in their application to energy. Some of the lean concepts, and we'll go through this in a minute: value add versus non-value add. Value add changes the form, fit, or function of the part. Non-value add does not change the form, fit, or function, and you want to know which is which. And so Kaizen energy treasure hunts force you to think about some of these sort of lean terms. So let's walk through this, because this kind of helps identify how you look at things from a lean perspective. We have energy that's used for the part of the process. Now, it can be normal, as you see the flow chart goes to the left, normal, or it can be abnormal. Let's take an example. You need 50-foot candles of light. Normal, it would be 50-foot candles of light. The part's in process, you need it. Abnormal, you're providing 100-foot candles for whatever reason. You change your lights to LED, you didn't put auto-tune capability, you didn't dim them down, you overlit the space when you did your LED change. That's abnormal. So we've got a term there to consider: normal, abnormal. Now take the normal and it splits again to value add, changing the form, fit, or function of the part, to non-value add. Now, if there's something that's value add, you want to keep it. You have to keep it, but you want to upgrade its efficiency. Make it so that it's providing even greater value. If it's non-value add, sometimes there's something called needed non-value add, inherently needed. You got to keep certain lights on for egress in case of a fire or whatever. But there's a lot of non-value add that is not needed. So lights are on when nobody's at home. Lights are on and production isn't occurring. That's not needed. You want to severely reduce or eliminate that to the extent you can. So let's walk through the terms we just walked through. Normal, abnormal. There's definitions, and you want to think about that. And then there's value add and non-value add. And these are the sorts of things that Kaizen lean thinking forces you to think about. Now, there's 7 typical ways, actually there's one more, but that's of the person, but 7 typical ways which are called muda in lean thinking. We don't say manufacturing anymore, it's lean thinking. Overproduction. You need to make 10 things. You make 20. I guarantee it takes more energy to make 20 instead of 10. So there's some opportunity there if you can make that better. Defects. You need 10 things and 5 of them are wrong, so you got to make another 5. There's extra energy to make those. Transport. You got to move things from one part of the factory to another part of the factory. There's energy it takes, whether it's human energy or it's a fork truck or you name it. Inappropriate processing. Do you really need to do that step? We find that a lot when we ask that question, and I'm going to bring that back up later on as we talk about being able to ask the right question. Unnecessary motion, I think we can all know if you're working at tabletop level and you're able to work very nicely versus you have to go stand up and stand down and so on. Unnecessary motion. Unnecessary inventory. If you got a lot of inventory because you're overproducing these, you got to heat the space, you got to cool the space. You might have to dehumidify the space. There's extra energy involved there. Then, believe it or not, there's energy in waiting. Just keeping the building up, just keeping it heated and stagnant. Just you standing in one place takes energy. So this is, again, the typical lean sort of muda energy waste areas. So we've kind of defined some terms. Now we know what Kaizen is, we know what value add is, non-value add. But what is this Kaizen treasure hunt or any treasure hunt? From the Kaizen point of view, it's similar to any sort of lean event. So a lean Kaizen event. And it's a short burst of activity, 2.5, maybe 3 days, can be longer if there's larger areas, more complex. And you do analysis, but it's not paralysis like you get into with, sometimes I've been in Six Sigma projects where, man, we just say, let's do another set of tests. No, we're done. You only have 2.5 days. You've got to do analysis toward action. Kaizen treasure hunt, fish, will find opportunities, and it will teach people how to fish. And I'll go over that a little bit as well. And you can have them focus on a whole site. You can have them focus on a specific area or process. And some things that we're going to use examples later on. We're going to talk about compressed air. And it was a compressed air Kaizen event, 2.5 days. And we're going to manage, every event should be managed with daily reviews of progress. Did we do good? Did we do bad? We have a plan for tomorrow. Do we need to adjust that plan for tomorrow to make it better? So why do we do these? Typically, they provide great savings, lots of money saved with little cost. And the site learns how to identify and quantify. They're given fish, and they're taught to fish. Now, the photo down there is me with a guide up in Maine, and that's a salmon. And he gives me fish, but he also teaches me how to fish. And I get to catch my own fish. That's what treasure hunts, but especially Kaizen treasure hunts do. They teach you how to do it. And as a result of that, it facilitates employee behavioral change. It's employee engagement, employee awareness. And you usually get a very good, strong energy reduction plan quickly. Whether you need it for corporate goals, sustainability, whatever your reason is, or this year, a lot of people want quick cost savings ideas because they're a little behind in their numbers. And this is just an example from an event. But if you look at the first category, savings less than 3 months, those are low cost, no cost things, $53,000 of savings if you spend $500. We were able to find lots of stuff that didn't take a lot of money to fix. Now, this is my rules of order. This applies to every project, everywhere dealing with energy. Number one, safety always. It's not safety first. Safety first puts it in the ranking with other things. No, it's got to be safe always. Second is it's got to work. If it doesn't work, it's going to get thrown out and they'll never think about energy again. Third, and only after you've done 1 and 2, do you think about energy. And this applies to whether it's ASHRAE Level 2 auditing or Kaizen treasure hunt, you name it. Just think about these rules. And when we do projects, we put them up on the board and we always look at them. Is this safe? Are we making a problem? Is it still going to work every time, and so on? So this is our flow chart for Kaizen events, borrowed from Toyota, but we're going to kind of walk through this stuff in a little bit, in a little greater detail. But first, you got to kick off and you got to do some initial training. You got to prepare. I cannot stress preparation enough. You got to have good preparation. So we're going to intro people. What is Kaizen? How do you get data? We'll put an agenda together. Then we'll train and create these teams. So we'll talk about that in a minute too. But eventually we're going to be at the event and we're going to go and see. We're going to get out there. We're going to identify the opportunities. We're going to get data. We're going to quantify the opportunities. The next stage, analyzing the data, figuring out what's good, what's bad, has this been done before, all of that stuff. And then finally, we'll go down to the bottom left. We're going to summarize everything we saw and analyzed and summarize what's called Kaizens. In the Toyota concept, every opportunity is called a Kaizen. So it's individual Kaizen. So you have individual savings and payback and greenhouse gas reduction. And then from all those things, you make a management presentation. Now, some places like to skip that step. I don't like to, because that forces the team to really think, forces you to gut check and identify what's the right thing that management wants to hear. Notice that dashed line. That's usually where the event ends, but it doesn't end. You've got to implement stuff. You identified a lot of stuff. You've made some changes during the event, but you got to make those changes, the further changes. Then you want to share those changes with others. So that's kind of our flow chart when we facilitate events. So here's the general steps. In that flow chart, you'll hear all these little things. You probably heard it. Documenting reality. What is the problem? What are the wastes? Again, we walked through the mudas and things in there. What are the things that we're going to do to fix it, the countermeasures? We want to do a reality check. Has it been done before? What happened last time? We want to make some changes. Whenever you do a Kaizen event, if you can make changes during that event, that's powerful. You're testing those changes, verifying the changes are the right ones, and you can maybe even measure the results. If you find that all that works, you want to make it a standard. Whatever worked in, I have a rule of 3. If it worked in one spot in the factory, it'll probably work in 3. Same thing in the hospitals, you name it. And then you do want to celebrate. If you have a good event, do something for the team. And then eventually you're going to want to do it again, because you're going to have to go back and look at it again. So the first step is documenting reality, and typical Kaizen events would include these sorts of things. A TACT time sheet. Now, TACT time, for those of you that don't know, TACT is a German term actually, and it's the heartbeat of the process. We make a part every blank. We make a part every blank. That's the tack time. You want to know that because you can't change it. You can't slow that down. You'll want a Kaizen event profile sheet. I'll show you that in a minute. A target sheet. What are we trying to achieve? You might have a spaghetti chart. When I talked about earlier waste motion, this is a great example. This is from a real event where somebody brought in something and they had to go to the tool die bench, and then they went to the stamping press and they had to inspect it, and then they had to go and you can see the waste of energy in there. You'll probably have a layout of the area you're working on, whether it's the whole factory or compressor room, you name it. A 5S and safety audit checklist. We do whole other trainings on 5S and energy. And then a Kaizen newspaper. We'll discuss that. Because the three most important things for an energy event are the profile sheet, the target sheet, and the newspaper. So here's an area profile. Let's look at it real quick. What's the event description? Compressed air reduction at blank. What are the preliminary objectives? We want to reduce leak rate by blank, and we want to get the compressor more efficient. I'll show you that in a minute from an actual target sheet. Who's on the team? What are the production requirements? The tack time. Again, you can't make things slower. I've never had a site yet where they said, yeah, go ahead, make that slower. Process information. What are the compressors? What metering do we have? What metrics do we have? And that'll lead into the current situation and problems. We know our leak rate. We know this, whatever it is. And so that's documenting the before picture. And this is a target sheet. I'm going to show you a filled out one at the end, so don't panic. But what is the key measurement that you're starting off with? Maybe it's the leak rate for compressed air leaks. So you know your starting rate. Hopefully you can either meter that, or there's other ways to easily figure that out. You have a target at the end of the event, and then every day, you know, if you're hitting your targets or how close you're going, and you can at the end know, did we make the right change? What's our percent improvement? So that's a target sheet. Again, some energy treasure hunts don't have a target. I like to have a target because it forces you to think a little bit more instead, let's go look at the compressed air system. No, let's look at the compressed air system for leaks. Let's look at it for efficiency. How many kilowatts per 100 CFM, you name it. And this is a Kaizen newspaper. Very common that you have something that what I call as an ARM, an action responsibility matrix. Something that you can use, look at, and quickly say, where are we? Have we fixed the root cause? Do we have the right countermeasures? What's our percent complete? And it just forces you to look at that. And if you email me or whatever, I'll send you an Excel form of this because there's nothing proprietary on it. It's just Excel, but it takes time to put together. If you don't have to put it together and you want to use it, go right ahead. So the first thing you do, you've got to do pre-event planning, pre-event steps. You want a clear description of your problem, goals, targets, whatever it is. You need a clear description. Now, you see this number 42 there. It's my classic problem definition statement is in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the book by Doug Adams. He describes these people asking his great supercomputer, what's the meaning of the life, the universe, and everything? And he said, come back in a million years, and he gave the answer 42. Sounds silly, but it was a terrible problem statement. So if you do that, your bad problem statements, you'll fix bad things. Don't do that. You want to fill in your profile sheet. That'll cause you to think. You want to fill in your target sheet. That'll cause you to think. You'll probably want to do some phone calls or meeting in advance. When we can't get to a site in advance, we will have 2 or 3 one-hour phone calls where we'll figure out all the specifics, logistics, what are we going to look at, what's there, and all that stuff. Pre-event, you'll form a team. Who's involved? You want to probably figure out sub-teams. Who's involved for what energy use areas? If you can, I highly recommend training the teams in advance so that you don't have to do it during your 2.5 days. People know what to look at walking in the door. And you want to collect some baseline data, whether it's macro, the whole site, micro department, whether it's even granular, individual leaks, whatever it is. So when we talk about documenting reality, I said I was going to use compressed air as just an example. You want to get upfront metrics as much as possible. And you can do it with a lot of data logging. You can do it with meters. This particular site, we installed in the top photo, you see a CDI flow meter for $1,000, and this site was going to keep the meter. We got actual cubic feet per minute data. And the graph below shows that data. And if you look at the bottom, you'll see 150. That's 150 CFM, and it bounces up and down a little bit. And then at some point, after one of the vertical lines, it jumps up to 200, maybe, and it goes up to 270. That 150 was the base load leak rate. So by just spending some money that was going to be valuable for the event and beyond, we were able to get true documented reality. So you want to form some teams. Think about your teams. You want to make sure you got the right people. Maintenance always seems to be on the team because they're managing and maintaining the equipment. Facilities people, mechanics usually are involved, whether it's mechanics from the vendor for your air compressors, your HVAC systems, your boilers, whoever's maintaining. And then ET does not stand for extraterrestrial. It's an electronic technician. They are getting to be the most important people in a factory, with everything having PLCs, programmable controllers. You really need to involve those people. You want to make sure you have people that have the authority for change. Involve them on the team. The last thing you want is for a team to do something, say, this is what we want to do, and then you have to ask for authority to do that, and you don't get it. Involve them in the process. You know, operators. We all know that operators know the equipment better than anybody else. Bring them in. Influential people. Let's say you've got somebody that everybody listens to because they've been there the longest, or they got good horse sense, or it's the union super, whatever. Bring them in because they'll be very helpful with the whole team dynamic. Safety and environmental teams. Again, you don't want to create problems. The last two are similar but different. Those with a different set of eyes. That can be from your site or a sister site. It can be just within your organization or whatever, but a different set of eyes often means an internal, external consultant. Highly recommended. I've been on every side of this equation. Been in manufacturing when we've done it by ourselves. Been in manufacturing when we've hired somebody. The results were always better when we hired somebody to help us. And now I'm a consultant, and I've seen it again both ways. You might form a team into a sub-team, depending on your focus and area of interest. Typical teams might be motors, HVAC, boilers, compressed air, lighting, maybe plug load, whatever it is that's appropriate for the site. This is an example of the team for an event here. We had basically everybody we could think of for this. And you can see maintenance was involved. Everybody was there. We had just tremendous buy-in from this site to do the event. This was their second event. The first one, which I'll show you a graph of later, was so successful, they said, let's do it again in this area over here. Firm believers of the process. But operators were there. Vendors were there. The utilities were there. Highly recommended. And this is I love working at breweries. I love getting paid in both cash and beer. Something special about that. I'm kidding. All right. But we had the site personnel. We had the utility, Efficiency Vermont. But in Vermont, they had other brewers come to Harpoon. They didn't care. They really enjoyed the fact that they could share knowledge among the brewers and make them all a little better. And again, we were there as well. And this is from a smaller site, but it had a lot of energy use. I include this because you don't have to have big teams. You have to have fully functioning teams, but it all depends on what teams you're having. Are you going to have try to look at everything, or are you just going to look at compressed air and HVAC, which was the case for this? So 5 people was all it took for this decent sized factory. So you want to do your training in advance. As I said, it's not a bad idea. You're going to train people on the process. What is Kaizen? How are we going to do this? What's the schedule? We're coming in Sunday. I'll go through that in a minute, your objectives. And then what we're going to look for. This is so critical. We need to calibrate that as much as possible. You don't want to train somebody on boiler systems if they don't have boilers. It's that simple. And it kind of sounds simple, but I've had people come and they just bring their standard, here's my standard training thing, and it's like, does not apply. They never ask that question. We train people on how to keep score, how to do the calculations, how are we going to roll everything up. And again, the training is very site specific. This is just an example slide from a compressed air module toolbox that we do for one company. We've generated these toolboxes that they have their people go and do before an event. We don't have to be on the phone to train them. They just, you know, it's a webinar that they just sign up for. It's been recorded and they do it. But we'll train people on how to use the ultrasonic compressed gas leak detector. That's the top left photo there. Train people on when and how to use soap bubbles, such as Snoop, to clearly show leaks, especially with some of the more expensive compressed gases, nitrogen, argon, helium, you name it. We'll train people how they might want to put a plastic bag around something and how to do the calculation on that. And then we'll also train people as appropriate. They've got to be safety trained on when and why we want to get full power measurements on an air compressor. So this is just one slide from the compressed air module. Now, we're going to talk about the event a little bit, but if you don't have these tools, these are some of the things that are very handy. We provide these, that's why I put it this way, but you can rent them from services, maybe your utility can have them, whatever. But if you've got any compressed gases or compressed air, ultrasonic leak detector will help you identify where are the leaks and quantify. Every leak is this CFM, which equates to a value. All the data loggers out there, there's Hobo, there's Dent, you name it, that can do a variety of things. As much as you can, get some data with those things in advance. During the event, remember, it's only 2.5 days, so it's really only a day or so of data logging during the event. So you're only going to get a snapshot, and the longer your snapshot, the better value is of that data. Maybe a thermal imaging camera, very incredibly important for, let's say if you have steam systems or anything like that. Thermometers, everybody's got those thermometer guns now for taking temperatures of foreheads of people, but those come in very handy. And combustion meters, you name it. Well, one thing we provide, and you should have somebody provide, is a new and different set of eyes. I can't stress that enough. You get sight blind being at your site every day, and you don't see certain things that if you were able to step away for a while, you would see. And that's where, again, a different set of eyes can help you. So we'll do these upfront calls, as I said, probably 1 hour each, 2 calls, organize things, get pre-visit information, maybe send data logging out. What are we going to monitor and measure? What systems do you already have some data on? We'll assemble all the measurement tools and everything. We'll try to conduct the training in advance and set up the teams. So again, a lot can be done remotely before the event, and it should be done before the event. Now, the event is 2.5 days. Starts typically on a Sunday, and I'll get into that, but what you want is a true sleeping plant. You want it done on the QT, on the quiet, as much as possible. Yes, you have to tell security. Yes, you want to tell the supervisors of the area what's going on, but you don't want any behavior or condition changes. You want to see what really happens on off shift. Now, I have plenty of sites that say, we don't have an off shift. Yes, you do. It may not be, completely off. It's not as busy as the other times, but there's very few sites that are full 24/7. All three shifts are the same. So you want to see the true before condition. Remember, value add, changing the form, the fit, or the function of the part, that can only happen during production. If it's not, production is not occurring, then you have the opportunity to find non-value add. And that's when you get into the sleeping plant, you find a lot of stuff. We don't have time to go through some of the findings, but it's incredibly valuable. Sometimes we'll do this sleeping plant at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday or a Monday or something if we can't manage to do it on a Sunday. So typically we start on a Sunday afternoon. We hope to not bump into football season because there's some very diehard fans out there. And we'll meet at the site. We'll open up, do our safety briefing, and we'll see the site conditions. We might break up and look at everything as one group, or we might break up into 4 separate groups, whatever's appropriate and the site teams feel okay with. The whole purpose is to start your identification process. What do you think you're going to look at? What do you think you're going to want to data log come Monday morning? Because Monday, you really got to get cracking with identification and quantification. So you take photos and you look at them and you basically got everything queued up for Monday morning. And then on Monday, you do your opening. Hopefully, you can do your training in advance. If not, you got to do it then. And you want to start in further on this identification process. Now, some of the things you can start to quantify right away. So you really want, whenever you can put some quantification to things immediately, you want to do that. And then again, every day you have your paperwork, your target sheet, and so you're keeping track, keeping score. And the photos here are just top site, a big food processing, and this is a major event for them. They decide to look at every system throughout the whole plant. You can see there's a lot of people in that room, very dedicated, very positive event. And then the chart below was generated after just a few hours. If you can't read it, it says exhaust fans. Nobody ever looked at the exhaust fans previously, what their horsepower was, what their airflow is, how many hours are they on, and we quickly put numbers to those things so that we knew what the opportunity was. So Tuesday is often the last day of the event. Some sites, as I said, might be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and a Wednesday. It all depends. But 2.5 days is fairly typical. That's the day where we finish your identification, finish quantification. And as you finish those things, you want a gut check. Is this still the right thing to do? Does this make sense? You want to organize everything into a report out, prepare slides, and give those slides to the executive team. And then you also need to prepare for the next steps. What are we going to do beyond this event? Again, there's things that have to be done, followed up on. Kaizen newspaper helps push those things along, whatever your system is. So just 2 examples here from an event. Shop printers. Nobody ever thought of those things. And again, production goes down Friday night at midnight. People don't come in until Monday morning, 6 a.m. Nobody ever thought about these shop printers. We had plug load data loggers. So you stick it in, you can get the data. We realized it's decent enough, and there's probably almost $7,000 of opportunity. And all we need to do is put in appropriate timers to do this. And you can see below the current state for the R&D exhaust. Exhausts were always on. They shouldn't be on. You've got the horsepower savings, but you also have the conditioning savings. So again, how can we do that? Very quickly identified, and now we have changes to make. So here's a target sheet. Now, I said we were going to use a compressed air example. 2 key measurements for this site. One was leak rate. I said we noticed 150 CFM leak rate, and that was what was starting, and we wanted to get rid of 50% of that. We thought we could easily do that. A normal site, if you do it all, not over 3 days, but if you do it over a course of a week or two, you can get rid of 75% or so. So you can see the values. First day we got to 135 per the meter. Second day 120, third day 100. We got 33% reduction during the event. But if you go down to remarks, number 1, leak detection, address major leaks first. We believe continuation can definitely meet 75 CFM reduction. Go back up to key measurements. Number 2, compressor system's efficiency, kilowatt hours per 1,000 cubic feet. It was at 5.5. The target we were trying to hit was 4. And you can see the first day we didn't do anything. Second day we were able to make some improvement. And on the third day, as the leak rate got to 100, we were able to bring it to 3.9. Now those are two different things. Rate of flow, leak rate, and then efficiency. You can very efficiently make air, but leak a lot of it so that you're not saving anything. That's why there's two sort of key metrics. Now, we met the second metric. We got to 3.9. Target was 4. Go down to remarks. Leak reduction allowed smaller load-unload machine to be used, getting to better efficiency. There was a very large unload machine, but we were able to shut that off and use the smaller one, which was more efficient. Also brought small recip online for trim. Instead of 2 big machines kind of fighting each other, you had one smaller machine and then a small recip. Recips are very efficient. So because we did number 1, we were able to hit number 2. We didn't make it all the way to number 1, but because of that, we got that second key measure. So we're still talking about the event process steps. At some point, you're going to want to make changes. What changes do you make? You got to figure it out. Most organizations have some sort of decision matrix. You have to organize your thinking. You have to prioritize. What are we going to do first, second, third, and fourth, and why? So once you've done that, demo an area. Make your small changes, and then scale up. Again, standardize that change once you have confidence, and you got a track record that change is working. Follow your data. I had a plant manager who said to me, Kaizen team made a presentation. The plant manager said, great, thank you very much. I said, all right, now let's go to the compressor shack, and followed me out to the compressor shack. And I said, all right, see that button right there on that compressor? That red button will stop that compressor. Push it. And he said, no, I'm not going to push it. I said, yeah, your team just said, if you push that button, nothing will happen except you'll save $50,000 a year. Well, I guess I can try. He pushed the button. Nothing happened except saving. So follow your data. If you have confidence in it, don't be scared of your data. Now, everybody I think knows KISS. Everybody knows it. Keep it simple, stupid. I like to change that a little bit, or maybe add another flavor to it. Keep it supremely simple. The more simple it is, your change, the better it's going to work. And then you need to prove your concepts and improve on them. And you want to, wherever you can, mistake-proof your changes. And again, as simple as possible, but yoke means mistake-proof. It means you're going to make changes that work the same every time. So I just threw this in there so you can have a decision matrix and you can see ranking criteria at the top. 1 is good, 4 is bad. You always got to know your ranking, what's good, what's bad. And you can see cost savings greater than $10,000 is great. Number 4 is less than $1,000, and then you get scale between the two. But you see that we've got cost savings, cost rank. Number 1 for cost rank, less than $1,000, less expensive, whereas some planners plant managers say, why are we talking about it? Let's just get her done. And then you've got all the way to number one, greater than 10 grand, a capital project or whatever you call it is required. And then time, effort, employee acceptance, environmental rank and safety rank, production rank will help production or have no impact. Again, you cannot change the takt time. Can't do it. Can't make it worse. Number 4 under production will likely hinder production. If you ever have a number 4 there, take it off your list. All right. And then risk of failure. Just a way to organize. What do we do first, second, third? Put some numbers down. Boom. Numbers will spit out. Projects will spit out. So this is an example of the site that I showed you the picture that had done a second event. The first event started December 7th, 2010, which is the red line kind of to the right here, or to the left, I should say, around December 7th. And 2009 is also on the graph, and that's in the blue. But you can see that the 2010 almost tracks the same until that event. And then after that event, that first weekend, we're about 300 to 400 kilowatts less on the weekend. And then the next week, we're about 4 to maybe 450 kilowatts less on the weekend. And then over Christmas, and that's the break, you can see we're much less than we were the prior year. Production volume was the same. Everything was the same. The only difference was the Kaizen event. So some typical sort of results. This is just a site, one of the sites. 23% of total energy spend has been identified as being able to be removed. And payback, you get $22,000 immediate payback. Just very typical that with whether Kaizen treasure hunts, especially, or energy treasure hunts, you find these no low-cost sort of items. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of CAT, this Kaizen treasure hunt? Advantages: it's a quick way to get a plan. 3 days, you can have a plan of some good things to do that are truly worth it. Advantages: it involves many people. Why is that an advantage? Because you're training people. Again, fish and learn how to fish. You get greater site buy-in if you involve many people. If they're involved with identifying, quantifying a project, they're more likely to do it. So again, you're training people on the process, the tools, the culture, and this really does fit with a lot of site improvement programs, whether it's Lean or Six Sigma. A lot of places have continuous improvement teams at CIP. Very typical that this is something that fits into those organizations. And so if you do these events, it checks off that need, so to speak. And you might sometimes have utility incentives, but I always say check. Disadvantage: you're probably going to have an outside facilitator cost or something. And again, I recommend it. You'll get greater results. That's my experience, both from a user point of view and as a consultant point of view. Disadvantage: just like an advantage, is it involves many people. Disadvantage: people means resource for a company. You got to take people from their normal job for a day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever. Takes a long time to organize. Not a long time, but it takes time to organize. You got internal time and external facilitator time. And it takes hours to train the team, perform the event. But you might have utility incentives for audits. This is not an audit, but not treasure hunt events. But that's changing rapidly. We're finding, especially in the Northeast, and we've done them for Ontario Hydro and again, Vermont, you name it, that there is utility support more and more for these events. So, lessons learned. What have we learned through all this stuff? Number one, and this gets to any what I call people-centric event. The more you plan and prepare, the better the event. Anybody who's run a strategic meeting where people are coming together, and you name it, knows the more you prepare and dry run things and whatever, the better the event. And you see that number 4 to 1 there. That's a ratio. If you're going to have a day's meeting, and I mean this very seriously, you might spend 3 or 4 days of your time for that one-day meeting, because that's going to use everybody's time so efficiently compared to not being prepared. Number two, you get stronger results using outside facilitation. Now, again, maybe that's from the state government, maybe that's, this is somebody internal to your organization who's very good at facilitating events, whatever, but it is really hard to facilitate and participate both. It's very difficult unless you're trained how to do it. And it's one of those skills that takes time. Sites have to commit to the event. You cannot provide staff some of the time. We've had events where a team had, and this gets into number 4, I had 3 people, then one person gets pulled away, and then another person gets pulled away. But think of it, if you have a team with 2 people, one person gets pulled away, you're now brainstorming by yourself. That's not recommended. Number 5, it's important to have a different set of eyes. And notice the wording here, a different mouse. I can ask questions that site people cannot of the vice president of manufacturing. They're scared to, or they'll ask it in a wishy-washy way, and I'll come right out and say it, because you're paying me to ask questions like that. And the last point is the event does not end when you leave the site. Doesn't end with the on-site end. You have to have tracking systems, the Kaizen newspaper, whatever it is for follow-up. So, summary time. You can get a lot of energy reduction from these events. So again, very typical 10%, often 20, maybe more energy reduction identified between all the projects. You'll get no cost, low cost, but maybe you include some of the projects that haven't been looked at in a while, and you include those as well. Very often you have less than 1 year simple payback when you add all this stuff together. That everybody likes less than 1 year payback these days. But again, teaches you how to understand from a site level how to attack, how to understand energy reduction, and you buy into things by doing that and being a part of it. When you get out and do an event, whether it's a Kaizen treasure hunt or a treasure hunt, hopefully you will maximize the opportunity for employee engagement and communication. You will tell people what you're doing and why. And these events really make people think, oh, compressed air is that expensive. I should do something different. What should I do? So you'll get up many no-cost, low-cost items. Typically, they'll pay for the event if you do need outside facilitation. And I think it's just a win on many levels. So that's it for Kaizen Energy Treasure Hunts. If you've got questions, please ask them in the Q&A box, and I will get to them. And while maybe a few people are typing, we're going to do a bunch of these. Now that much of our world is remote-er, we're going to determine some dates and probably do some of these topics. Making and using energy metrics. Lots of people have them. There's lots of good ways to use them. We need to train a little bit on that to use them better. You'll see energy reduction with 5S, data loggers, and so many things. So if you're interested in any of these topics, please let us know. And please be aware, you're probably going to get something that'll say upcoming topic. Anyway, there's my contact information. If you would like the materials that I mentioned, please just let me know, and I'll definitely do that and send them to you. And I appreciate the time. And I hope this gave you a better understanding of what treasure hunts are, and then what the Kaizen energy treasure hunts are, and where, why, when to use these events to really get a good idea and a good plan for energy reduction. So, any questions or feedback, I would be very pleased to get it. I have a question here of have sites done 3, 4, 5 of these? And the answer is yes. But this is good, you know, as a teacher or whatever, I appreciate when my students have learned. And for those that have done 3, 4, 5 or whatever, they don't need me anymore. They know what they're doing. They got the materials. They got it down pat. They know how to facilitate and participate, and that's fine by me. So yes, but at least the first event or two, I highly recommend a different set of eyes and mouth. Any other questions? We still have a few minutes. I have a question here. Can this apply to anything that's not industrial? And the answer is absolutely. Treasure hunts, Kaizen treasure hunts, it doesn't matter. The Kaizen, we've done Kaizens for hospitals. We've done Kaizens for commercial buildings, where we've gotten the maintenance staff and the operations staff involved and so on. Manufacturing just happens to be an area that is somewhat typical for Kaizen treasure hunts because they have this, like I said, the CIP, continuous improvement staff, or whatever they call it, or their Lean Six Sigma team or whatever. And this fits into what they're already doing in industry pretty well. Anybody else? I was trying to keep this to 1 hour, and I did it. I'm pretty impressed. I'm glad to see that. All right, thank you, sir. I appreciate that, Howard. Thank you. All right, if we don't have any other questions, thank you for your questions. And again, please contact us. Please look for more information. We got a ton of information we don't mind sharing because we think there's plenty for everybody out there. And with that, we'll just call it a day, and thank you very much and be safe.